So Shona's going to be followed by Dr Shrehan Lynch, who works at UEL. I met Shrehan years ago at a BAME Ed event, and you'll probably know her from Twitter because she's the co-founder of BAME PE, but it's been reframed as PhysEquity, which Shrehan might actually talk about the importance of the language actually framing that initiative. It's fab to see you. Over to you in your presentation, Shrehan.
Thank you, and hello everyone. Welcome this morning. My name is Shrehan Lynch and I'm a senior lecturer in teacher education at the University of East London. It is a huge privilege to present alongside those that have come before me and coming after me. So thank you very much for having me today. So welcome to this presentation. I hope to give you some examples, and I'm flying through because we've only got 10 minutes, of representative change needed within my discipline of physical education. And I'm going to begin by asking lots of questions and hope to stimulate your thinking in a Paulo Freirean sense. So I hope you see throughout my problem posing and you begin to question your PE department's makeup at both a curriculum and staffing level. And if you aren't a PE person, please don't go and make a cup of tea. Stay with me because I promise that you will take away something. So before I do, I want to share some artwork with you. And if you have access to the comment screen, feel free to type in and let me know what you see in this image. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Off you go. Okay, so seeing some really awesome stuff in the chat comments. My question to you is, who saw the Spanish flag? Who saw the portrait of the painter's wife in the left-hand corner? Who saw the dying bull's head here? Who saw the human figure on the raft at the bottom? Who saw this infant at the bottom as well, and these insects and all of the mini little statues? And who also sees the head here with the shirt and the green tie? So this painting is something called a hallucinogenic torridido by Salvador Dali. And I show you this in an attempt to discuss perspective. And it's really linked to all parts of our education system that are hidden and not seen, but really there. And the whole point for me to show you this is to show you new things. Sometimes we don't see things that are sometimes very clear and obvious to us. And that's my starting point for explaining why PE in its current form is highly problematic. So now thinking about your current PE department, one, do they reflect the students that you teach in ethnicity and race, but also in sexual orientation, in gender, in ability, or are they entirely white, cisgendered, heteronormative, male-dominated, able-bodied, and largely Christian? The very stereotypical waving the patriarchy, male-dominated PE department. That's one of our first issues in PE, is the representation of a homogenous group, stereotypical PE departments, and that links directly to whose voice really matters in both curriculum and pedagogical decisions. Secondly, the curriculum on offer, which is largely made up of Eurocentric sports. So whose PE department has something called a multi-activity model in place? And that is where you're simply rotating round activities year on year. We've got football and rugby in the winter, and then we move to athletics and cricket in the summer. And some of you might be thinking, well, that's great. Why is that a problem? Well, research has stipulated for decades, I might add, that these curriculum offers are firstly highly gendered, where females, for example, are taking part in dance and netball, and then the males in football and rugby. And my question is, why aren't all young people offered equal opportunities to take part in everything? And secondly, a curriculum that focuses on rotating round activities. A well-known PE scholar called David Kirk has called this approach a sport as techniques approach. So here we see the practice of setting students by physical ability, ranking of students, the nonsensical regime of fitness testing in schools, cross-country, and measuring students by their physical competitiveness. And within my new book that you would have seen on my first slide, my co-authors and I call this a really ableist and elitist curriculum offer, because physical education becomes a space of focusing purely on the technical, rather than, so for example, when I say focusing on the physical, I mean how to do an overhead clear in badminton or how to dribble in football, rather than social, cognitive and affective domains, such as how confident do you feel in your body? Are you happy with your performance? What activities do you enjoy moving in? And that's really my goal for any physical education class that I now teach. You know, just do young people enjoy it? So whilst I've touched on the makeup of staff, the curriculum offer, I now want to turn to pedagogies adopted by PE departments. And I generalize here, there's outstanding practice going on in pockets of this country and in other Western countries, and globally for that matter. But typically, on the whole, PE departments are employing direct instruction, and such an approach is based on white ideologies and practices that are outdated, flawed, highly traditional. And direct instruction sees the teacher as the knowledge holder rather than the student. It places sport as techniques at the center of PE, and it also gives students very little room for student choice, voice, responsibility, and agency in class. It also absents PE from any culturally relevant pedagogies, drawing on students' rich culture and heritage. I would love to see teachers informing their practice with current research and ensuring that the representation of young people within their curriculum is considered, even if we're using music, if students listen to music. Have we asked all students in our class if listening to music is acceptable for them when teaching things such as dance? Why are we just playing music that is of pop culture? Why aren't we drawing on music that they listen to? So offer culturally relevant sports to students, and offer spaces for students to teach each other, offer non-gendered activities, offer spaces for mixed physical education, offer spaces where we don't see gendered-based language. So these are just some of the tips that we share within our recently published book. In the last few moments, I want to just share with you and remind colleagues of the social justice network leading representative change, and that's PhysEquity, formerly known as BAME PE. And we changed our name to reflect the fact that not everyone identifies as BAME, and we want to ensure that we reflect a diverse teaching force, not only in race, but also social identifiers, as I've previously mentioned. PhysEquity is a social justice movement to increase representation in PE, both in terms of staff, but also in curriculum and pedagogy. So do check out our website for resources, and they're all free to access. Our trans inclusion and gender non-conforming resource has been downloaded thousands of times. And our blogs are widely and highly read. And we also have a new podcast series out focused on international series. So finally, I hope that you learned something today, and at least I opened up your perspective into the possibilities of what is PE and what it could be. Like the painting at the beginning, there are always things that we miss until we open up and we begin questioning, so that we can be better for our students. So just take a moment now and commit something to me, a commitment to action. Take part in my Padlet and share with me your personal commitment to PE as a discipline in your role as a leader, a governor, a head of department, or a teacher of English. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, and have a lovely day.
Wow, you packed in a lot of information there, Shrehan. Very impressed with your timekeeping, but also your content management. There's so many things I want to unpick, and there's lots of comments coming through rather than questions, primarily about what you talked about, the inequities, the elitism, the hierarchy within the PE curriculum. And I think your comment about don't go and have a cup of tea if you're not a PE teacher, like this is all of our problems. Well, speak to the audience. Like, how can the audience who aren't PE teachers go and perhaps influence and have those conversations at school?
Well, firstly, they can go and share the PhysEquity website, and they can share those resources, print them off, have you engaged with this blog. I would probably leave a couple of books of mine in the staff room for them to really start reading, because they're practitioner friendly. And I think that's really important. You know, I didn't know some of this stuff until I started doing my PhD, and I really questioned some of the stuff that I did in schools. So learn from PGC students coming in who hopefully have knowledge of really questioning our curriculum. Reach out to me, talk to me. How can I come and help you? I'm always in schools. I love being in schools and helping departments. And we have really great case studies of where it's being done really well. I was in a school yesterday that have an entirely negotiated curriculum. Like, that's amazing. That's really exemplifying student voice. And that's within East London.
And am I right in thinking, I'm sure I've read an article about the fact that PE is one of the most common subjects for leaders to become SLT and head teachers through, but quite often they are the white, straight, cis, able-bodied man. So actually there's something about diversifying the actual the teaching makeup of the subject as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and I hold my fellow teacher educators accountable for doing that. But also it means that we have to provide a positive physical education experience to those in school. And, you know, I always give this example of one of my colleagues who's as Islamic. He had a conversation with his daughter. What do you want to be when you leave school? And she said, well, I would want to be a PE teacher, but I've never seen a PE teacher in a hijab. Well, we go back to that, don't we? Representation at a staffing level. And I hold all leaders, you know, when you're interviewing for those PE posts, look for people who are diverse in thought, look for people who represent our students, and who don't look like you. That's so important.
And I'm thinking, I can't remember names today, but is it Dana? Is she on your radar? She's a hijab wearing PE teacher who actually represented her country at the Olympics. So we have got visible role models, haven't we, on social media? How can we elevate that as well?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can just look at my amazing trainee teachers at UEL. Every single one of my trainees exemplifies a social identifier that's of a minority group. So if you're looking to employ a PE teacher, that's a plug for my own training.
Get in contact. I love that. We've got a pipeline coming through. Not only teachers who are representative, but also care about social justice, and it's part of their work. So we've got two questions here. One, I think one's from secondary and one's from primary. So the question from the secondary teacher is, how can schools take their own demographic into account in order to offer or to enrich the wider experience of the subject to the pupils?
That's a really good question, actually. And I think there has to be some work there that understands the rich culture and heritage of young people. So I really love doing student snapshots. I still do it now with my trainees. You know, my family looks like this. What does your family look like? What holidays do you celebrate? Because we all know that our school system is based on the Christian calendar. I know 90% of the students that I work with in schools do not celebrate Christmas and Easter. So these are the types of things and conversations that we can have. If you're teaching about dance and you've got students that come from a Bangladeshi background, well, what music do they listen to? What dances? What can you get them to teach you? And I think that really sets teaching up in a very different way, where you're seeing students as knowledge holders, and you don't have the power, because I've said it before, we're all colleagues here, just some of us know more than somebody else, and your students are also your colleagues. They're going to be with you in X amount of years, teaching with you, or your comrade is a citizen in society.
Final question from a primary colleague about how can we make PE a safer space for those young people who are already becoming body conscious. I know the Dove Self-Esteem Project talks about the kind of the dip when girls turn 6 and 7 and become much more body aware. How can we address that in our primary classrooms and our primary curriculum?
Yeah, well, the focus is really stop asking them the teaching points of overhead clear, or teaching, who's thrown a javelin since they left school. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important. I'm saying change the focus. Look at curriculums like a body positive curriculum offer. And that means that you have to engage in research and you have to learn what else is out there. It's too convenient now for primary schools to get in coaches to deliver an hour of football, and you go and do PPA time. So instead, let's think about, right, what is a curriculum that focuses on body positive? And I have a great unit of work on that for primary schools. So reach out to me, whoever asked that question.
Amazing, thank you. And I think my final comment is for everyone who's not got a PE background, use sport as that vehicle for social justice. When you're thinking about the news and what's going on in the world, I think some of the most powerful stories are the regressions or progressions in cricket, in football, those key milestones in our historical journey. Like, for me, we need to elevate them and use them as part of the dialogue. I can see you nodding, Shrehan. Do you want to add any comment to that?
Yeah, I love it. I remember, I think it was the Japanese football team, how they took pictures of how they left their changing room after the World Cup compared to the other countries. And it was really like a sign of respect. It was completely clean. There was a note saying thank you. Sport has the ability for people, sport and physical activity, to allow communities to come together, no matter our differences. And we come together in similarities, and we really have to celebrate that if we're going to live a more socially just life. But first, we need to provide positive movement experiences in formal educational settings.
I could listen to you all day, Shrehan. Thank you so much for abridging it into 10 minutes a day. Thanks for your time. Lovely to see you and listen to you as always. And I hope I get to see you soon.